Hi guys, I just wanted to quickly rumble through a quick tournament review of Mini Madness, which was a GBHL 80, 200-point event. I was actually quite looking forward to this one, just because of the format's really unusual, and I really couldn't figure out what to take. But yeah, it was one I was quite keen on going to, just because it was a bit different, and also. Um, It's quite local to me. It was in Dorchester in South Oxfordshire, which is about 40 minutes from me. And Dan Garside and Joseph Harley were hosting, so I knew they'd put on a good event as well. So that was all good. I was doing my normal thing of agonising about what to take. I I kind of thought that shooting would be a premium. In fact, let's go over the rules quickly first. So, there were some restrictions just to stop any sort of absurd lists, basically. So you had to have between 4 and 26 models, inclusive of heroes, and then it had to be led by at least hero of fortitude, so you couldn't have minor heroes everywhere. Single faction, no alliances or legendary legions. Can't use March, and that's because the boards were 2 foot by 2 foot, so very small. Um, so I thought shooting would be good, but because of the board size, I was a bit unsure. So that kind of changed me to thinking throwing weapons would be quite good. So you get the shooting and the possibility of taking out a few models before combat, which would be huge when there's, like 10, 15 models for most players. Um, and I thought cavalry would be really good because obviously they can cover the whole board very quickly. Um, and then obviously models with multiple, or cheap models with multiple attacks. Obviously Hunter Orcs probably be pretty good, but I don't have any. And also I don't know, not super keen on them at the moment. Just as a, they're just a bit meh for me. Um, so I was thinking of a few things. I thought Shaku on Warg with a bunch of Warg riders would be good. Obviously using Isengard, and then I thought again with Isengard a cheap mid-tier hero like Ugluk, Malhir, or Vrasku would be good with a bunch of Uruks. Probably fewer crossbow, few berserkers, and whatever else. And I was also thinking Angmar would be hilarious with 2 Barrow Wights and then just full Warbands Forks. I think it was more or less full Warbands. But that'd probably be quite swingy, so I got talked out of that because obviously the lack of might and the swinginess of it would probably mean I don't know if it's actually that fun or not. But I thought it'd be hilarious, all the orcs causing terror and then like just paralyzing heroes and stuff. But it's probably right, it's probably not that good. And then obviously Hurin, I thought about maybe with some Warriors of Gondor. It's like a whole bunch of ideas. And then basically I just had the most unoriginal thing ever of my esteemed colleague Joe Gonzalez was asking for advice about one of his dwarf lists in one of our sort of chats, and then he had a bunch of warriors and rangers and some other stuff, some Khazards with a king, uh, and then I think it was Mr. Cameron Bell who said, "Why don't you just do dwarf captain with 9 Iron Guard?" And then because Joe wasn't doing it, I just totally stole that. But I only own 8 Iron Guard, so I made it a king with a throwing weapon, and then 8 Iron Guard. And that's what I ended up with the Kingdom of Khazad-dûm list. Um, which, despite not being my idea, I was pretty pleased with actually, because, low model count, but defense 6, and then their fight 4, strength 4, 2 attacks, high courage as well, courage 4. And the Dwarf King's a bit of a beast at fight 6, especially at low points. I thought he'd be quite good. Especially defense 8 as well, and obviously everything's got throwing weapons. Mobility is not such an issue because the board's so small. So I was quite pleased with that. It seemed like a good idea. Although, as Cameron pointed out, I think it's fair to say several times, Captain with 9 would have probably been better, but you know. um, so yeah, that's what I ended up with. I was quite pleased with it, and this is the first army that I can recall that I've actually painted up for a tournament. In the sense that at the moment I'm working through Halls of Thranduil and not my dwarves, but I kind of popped my elves aside to paint these 9 dudes up. which I actually really liked, and I kind of regret having to paint these bloody elves now. I'd much rather paint some of these dwarfs. But anyway, I digress. So that's the army. So let's get into the first game. So since we're playing 7 games, I'll probably be quite brief with the sort of reports of what went on. But basically, the first game was Lords of Battle, I believe. Lords of Battle, the one where you've got the wound tally, and whoever causes the most wounds win. I was against Sunny Hunter of Middle Earth and Mercia. So we played each other twice at tournaments, both won one. So this is going to be the tiebreaker, which I was a bit nervous about because of the Mahud King being a beast. But basically, we were on this board with a watch. Sorry, not any watchtower, with Weathertop, Hammondsul in the middle, and then just sort of open ground with a couple of trees, a few trees sort of spread across the board, just to sort of break it up a bit. I chose the side and deployed first. We were kind of talking about how to sort of get up and down the middle, and in the end, probably wasn't the best tactical decision, but I just kind of couldn't be asked to deal with it. In that, he had camels, and just trying to, if I hid in the middle, he'd probably sit back and blowpipe me, and then I just couldn't be bothered to deal with it. So I just set up on one side of the other bit sort of come at me. I didn't do a fancy formation. I just did a straight line. But I was a bit foolish here in the sense that I should have probably set up something a bit sort of like a concave line so I could get more guys in. But then I think that would have put Sunny off charging into me. But it's probably because I just had 5 dwarves in a line. He deployed opposite me, made sure he could charge, but I couldn't because obviously I moved less than him. He won the priority and just got stuck in basically. He charged his camels in. I think one of them had to stay at the back because he couldn't quite fit in, possibly 2 of them, I can't remember now. And then he stuck his king in on my king, and then, just all my other, I think my other dwarves were sort of busy with camels or whatever else. And basically my king died in turn 1 because the Mahud king won. Obviously, well, he won the strike officer and he rolled more than a 1, so he had the higher fight. He got the 6 and then was able to just slap my king. So, yeah, obviously, stupidly, I did that thing where I conflated Lords of Battle with Contest of Champions, so I thought I'd lost at this point. But that's alright, because it didn't actually affect anything I was doing in the game. I basically was just still playing just to go ham on everyone. But that's basically the main event, and then essentially I managed to sort of break some dwarves through and then sort of get them all in combat and stuff, sort of break out of that little line, and that's basically because my dwarves absolutely murdered. So I think the fight 4 and 2 attacks helped, but I think I lost 1 dwarf to one of Sunny's warriors, and then my Iron Guard just absolutely minced everyone else, including camels. They just didn't care. It was pretty wild. And then eventually it just ended up that he broke, and I think he had to take 2 turns where he was doing courage tests, because his he basically had his Mahud King and then sort of 1 or 2 guys, and I think he ended the game with the Mahud King and 1 guy, which is pretty wild. And I was broken too, but my dwarves were. I kept losing priority, to be honest. So he kept charging me, so I didn't have to do many tests, because although his warriors hadn't done anything, his king basically just absolutely cleaned up the Iron Guard, obviously with the fight 5. He just basically didn't botch once. And that was it, really. And he didn't botch the courage tests either. I basically needed him to botch a courage test. I think that was the only way I could win once the numbers were whittled down. And I was down to sort of, I think I had 3 or 4 Iron Guard towards the end. I just kind of needed him to run, but then he just sort of, reliably bonked 1 on the head of turn. We ended up with 2 models apiece at the end of the game, but he had caused more wounds. So it wasn't actually by a huge amount either, because obviously me being an idiot thought he had won by a lot because I was counting leader wounds rather than just general wounds. But that's fine. So he ended up winning 6-1 because we both broke each other, and then he killed my leader, and then he'd caused more wounds, but not twice as many, I think. So Yeah, I mean, we said at the beginning that it was basically just going to come down to luck. I mean, all these games do. So at low points, I think it really exaggerates people's luck. Same as battle companies, where you get a good round of combat or shooting or something, and you kill sort of 3 or 4 models, and that's actually half your opponent's army. So yeah, it's just one of those where my warriors did the work, and the I basically deployed the king, possibly not in a smart way, but also obviously just him getting the 6 and bonking the king, and then basically just not botching at all with the Mahud king was the thing that clutched it, and the warriors were kind of a bit of a sideshow, but at least I got to do a lot of murdering of Mahud, which was nice. So first game was a loss, very sadly, but on to the next one. So the next round was Recon, which is what you want to hear when you're a dwarf player. Although obviously the small boards were quite nice. We were on a lava board where we basically just ignored the lava because we were like, well, do we treat it as an obstacle and if you fall in you just die, or do we? In the end, we were both like, I can't be asked, let's just play it as open. Because I was against Mr. Joe Gonzalez of the same team as me, and with the dwarf list I was referring to earlier, with a king and then sort of like what 4, 5 warriors, 4 dwarf rangers, and then a couple of Iron Guard. I think he had like 13 models to my 9. And basically we both came on. I think neither of us came on turn 1, but then I think possibly I got an extra move on him or something. I can't remember. He might have not come on till turn 3, or he had to, I think he might have had to spend the might to come on, but not really of any consequence. But basically, he sent all his dudes on one side with his longbows behind to dwarf longbows even to have a pop at my dudes and try and thin the herd a bit. A few lucky shots, and he had the king there as well. And he sent 3 dudes on a mission to run round me to presumably try and triple me. So that was 2 warriors and a Khazad. I basically sent 2 Iron Guard to deal with his 3 models on the flank, and then everyone else just sort of thundered in the middle. To be honest, there's actually not like a huge. I mean, I can't really think of anything sort of amazing to say about this game. I just rolled an unholy number of 6s. In the sense that I think Joe played it right in trying to sort of hold me in the middle, shoot me to try and get a few lucky shots. Because obviously, if you kill an Iron Guard or 2 with a couple of lucky shots, that's very decent. But obviously, it didn't play out like that, and he sent the 3 guys around the side. I mean, he could have tied up my 2 dudes and with a couple of dwarfs and shielded, and then sort of ran his Khazad off or whatever, or tried to kill one, then tie up the other, run 2 off. Anything like that. It just didn't play out basically, in that I intercepted them and then killed them eventually. And then in the middle, again, I just sort of chucking a whole bunch of throwing weapons on my way in, and they did got a few kills, and then just kind of breaking off into one-on-ones where I could. So I had the 2 attacks, and I just kind of, obviously when you're rolling 6s, you can't really mess up. I think his king killed 1 or possibly 2 of my Iron Guard over the course of the game, because I didn't want to put king on king action on the cards, just because there's a 50% chance I lose that, and I was quite happy doing what I was doing. So I was using the king's fight to sort of beat up some normal dwarf warriors, because obviously they've got the same fight as my Iron Guard, which is a bit worrying. But it's just one of those where it's just a bit of a dicing, really. And I managed to run, one guy and then another guy off the back of the board to double him. And I think I may have actually tabled Joe, because I think I was able to surround and kill the king last round, possibly. Or no, actually no, I don't think so. I don't think it quite got that bad. I think he had I think he had his king. His king didn't die, and then I think that's right. And then he had a couple of warriors left. Yes, it wasn't as bad as all that, but it was pretty bad. But yeah, it's just one of those where the dice went my way, and at low models, that's what counts really. So I managed to get 8-0 for that one. I think I must have doubled him and got broken him without being broken, I think. So yeah, his leader must have been untouched, I think. So obviously defense 8 is pretty spicy. But yeah, not too much to say about that one, other than that Joe took it like a champ, because obviously it's mildly frustrating when you're sort of rolling dice and your opponent's just like 6, 6, 6, especially when I'm straightforward. His like dwarves are mostly defense 7, like the Khazads and the dwarves with shields, and I was just like 6. But yeah, no, it's just one of those, I think. So but Joe took it like a champ, obviously. So so that's game 2. On to the next one. So I had another friendly fire for my third game. I was playing Mr. Cameron Bell, Goldilocks himself, and we drew. I think it's hold ground, the one where yeah, it is whole ground. The one where you're in the middle. Not in the middle. There's one objective in the middle, and you basically got to maelstrom onto the board and get within a certain distance of it. I forgot to say before, but obviously with the small board size, obviously all the distances are adjusted and that. So you could. So it's just everything's halved really. So where you have to be within 6 of the middle normally, for this it was 3, and when you maelstrom on, you can come up to sort of within 3 of the corners. So that's the same for all the scenarios. Yeah, that's basically how they managed the board size, which I think worked quite well actually. But at the beginning, I was quite confident because I was just like, dude, I'm just gonna like squish a whole bunch of dudes with no armor and no fight, and just have a grand old time. But then I sort of realised it would come down to first turn priority, which is one thing I do hate about Maelstrom. Is it's just basically I won priority the first time, for the first turn, so I brought them on. I brought them on one table edge, and obviously Cam then deployed on the opposite table edge, as would obviously make sense. Um, it's annoying, so obviously if he'd have gone first, then I'd probably just blow all my mind to deploy next to him. And as long as I don't roll a 2, I could definitely do that. Because I forgot to say actually, sorry, he was using Woses with Gan as the leader, and then just I think it must have been like 15 Woses, I think. So obviously they're fight 3, strength 3, defense 3. But they got blowpipes, which will come into play later. But yeah, if I'd have managed to get that turn 1 priority, then I think I just deploy on next to him, chuck a whole bunch of throwing weapons at him, and then hopefully next turn just get involved. Obviously, he's a bit faster than me, but depending on sort of how he deployed, you'd hope that would be pretty conclusive for me. But obviously, as it was, we ended up at opposite table edges, and I was just like, oh, for God's sake, I'm just gonna get shot loads because he's got blow pipes of poisoned darts, and I'm movement 5, and it's just like, oh. So again, this one is super quickly. I had 9 models, and I spent a turn hiding behind a house to sort of minimise damage. But then basically he had 3 turns of shooting at me, one of which he was moving backwards, so -1. And I think basically the first turn of shooting, he got 1 kill. This is after I removed myself from behind the house and was like actually in the open, because the board was quite open. I couldn't really do anything about that. First turn shooting, he killed 1. Second turn didn't kill any, and sort of third turn I was like, oh, if he kills another 1, that's fine. So I got seven dudes with like all the attacks and all the fight value and all the rest of it. So in theory, it should still go quite well. And then he basically had a choice where I was right up in his face, and I had at that point I'd had a turn of throwing weapons on him as well, but I only got 1 kill, which is a bit annoying with 8 dice, but here's what it is. Because I only needed 5s, then 4s, I think. And he basically had a choice of, well, do I get stuck in and try and get favourable combats, or do I go back 3 inches and have 1 more turn of shooting before he can charge me? And he went with option B, which obviously makes perfect sense. And he then got 4 kills in 1 turn. I was like, for God's sake. So I basically had 4 models left when I actually reached him, including the king. And I mean, basically, he ran some of his dudes past me, because I basically had to run past the objective to get to him, because I couldn't just sit there and get shot. I had to basically go and deal with him and then sort of saunter back to the objective when I'd sort of done enough damage. But yeah, basically, he just sort of surrounded me, and I think he killed 2 of my dudes eventually, so I ended with just the king and 1 iron guard. And obviously controlled the middle uncontested, and it's just sort of one of those things where I just couldn't really do anything about it. So that was kind of just, I mean, that was just sort of me moving slowly towards withering fire, which somehow I just killed a bunch of dwarves. But it's just it's just one of those things, and I think the thing is I don't sort of begrudge the shooting, because basically I wanted them to get involved in combat because I know I'd win. So you can't really begrudge someone thinking, well, I'm not going to do that because I will just lose. And case in point is I had 4 models left and I killed 6. so I nearly broke him with 4 models out of 9. So, and obviously, I think one of them went down pretty quick. So in reality, it was probably 3 doing the killing. And yeah, obviously, it's just yeah, just did the business, and he played how he had to play to win, and that's fair. And yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. I lost the first priority. I moved slowly towards him. He got a couple of rounds of shooting in, and one of them was very good, and I died, and that was that. So I think I got a drubbing, absolute drubbing that game though, which was a bit sad. So what was the score? I lost that one. I lost that one 10-0 because basically he didn't touch my leader, so that's the only points I managed to conserve. So after that drubbing, we're on to game 4. So on to game 4. I was against Windy, who was bringing Dorchester. So keeper of the dungeons as leader, which is actually surprisingly scary because obviously I think he's 2 attacks, 2 wounds, but he's a high fighter, burly, and strike as well. So it's so he's actually quite a beast, really, who maybe doesn't see much play in sort of more competitive, higher points match. But at this points match, I was like, Jesus, I haven't got anything that can deal with him. He's just a monster. And then he had, well, he must have had two fell wargs, and then 2 or 3 hunter orcs, I think, and then a bunch of Gundabad's, about half of which had shields, and then a Mirkwood spider. So I actually thought this was a pretty terrifying combination. But we drew retrieval, which I was a bit cautious about because he had 3 move 10 things. So yes, and obviously the number of models as well was quite worrying, and I thought I kind of had to go ultra aggressive and then just sort of kill stuff and then sort of send the guy back after he'd kill stuff to sort of hold the objective. So I basically deployed in a line between these two sort of ice pillars that sort of blocked movement. So I basically didn't want to get surrounded and killed either, and I wanted to block access to my objectives. And yeah, basically, yeah, I got charged and I got stuck in. The spider tried to web me a couple of times, didn't sort of go anywhere, and Windy sent a wolf either side of me to sort of run past the ice pillars. I managed to intercept and kill one, and then I was just sort of slowly eating through with the combats in the fight phase. I think I've possibly got a throwing weapon kill or 2. I can't remember now. But yeah, this was a bit of an odd one in the sense that I thought I was going to get sort of wrecked by all the Gundabats, but I sort of managed to chip away, and I had a guy at the back who sort of charged round to get the to sort of get the traps and stuff. So yeah, so I was sort of able to peel him off when I got priority and go and pick up the objective. All he did was pick it up and sort of move it slightly, so it was in his possession. But yeah, after that he got charged, so I was kind of quite worried about that. I think the keeper of the dungeons ran out of might quite quickly actually, because I think so what he spent a might to do a heroic move off with me, and then I think he struck and then sort of spent one another time, so he was out of might pretty quickly. And I think he got into combat with my king, beat my king, and I thought, well, my king's dead. But I think the high defense saved him, as did Windy's poor rolling. And the story of sort of the fight in the middle is that I lost a few dwarves, but not as much as I was expecting to, and was able to kill a bunch of Gundabads to break him, and I was able to kill the spider as well because one of his wolves was left a little too close, so I was able to charge him and kill him, and then sort of move towards the objective, and the spider sort of went to intercept, but I was able just to whack the spider on the head and kill him in one with one iron guard, which was pretty cool. And yeah, just sort of crunching through the other stuff whilst losing some of my own guys. One his other wolf was basically unmolested, managed to run around his ice pillar, and sort of get onto my back objective, and I had been moving one guy backwards to go and deal with it. But I think this is where I got totally caught out by the size of the board, in the sense that I thought I had like loads of time to get back to my objective, because I was like, well, that he's ages away, isn't he? Like, because obviously if you sort of have have a warg up in the corner in normal size board. You've got a couple of turns to get on that back onto that objective, and then he sort of did a 10-inch move, and I was like, he's like he's right next to it. Basically, was able to pick the objective up before I could catch him, and was running sort of across the table with it. And then yeah, basically he just broke, and I think I wasn't quite broken at this point, because I'm not sure I broke at all actually. I can't remember, but so I'm recording this a couple of days afterwards because I've not had time until now. This means I'm slightly hazy on the details from all 7 games. But he won priority, and basically a whole bunch of his dudes ran off because he passed with the keeper of the dungeon, but then he moved him back to cover his back objective and try and kill my dwarf carrying the objective, which left a few of his Gundabauds out, and they just all failed, which was just really unlucky. And I desperately needed his wolf to fail because obviously another turn, well actually another 2 turns he'd be off the board. Another turn he'd probably be in his deployment half if he was able to do that to get those points. But luckily the wolf just ran away, and that's what saved me basically. Just luck. And what also saved me was the keeper botched his combat. Against my Iron Guard, and I think I did a wound to him, but didn't kill him or anything. But yeah, he lost his combat to my Iron Guard with the objective, which was intensely lucky, and then I sort of just mopped up a little bit in the middle. So it ended up with only a few, I think maybe 1 or 2 orcs left, the keeper of the dungeon, and then I think I had the king and then like 3 or 4 Iron Guard left. So it was a pretty bloody battle, but I think basically I was saved with just luck in the end, really, with that wolf running off. I think, well, actually, I did the math afterwards, and I think if that wolf had sort of had it for another turn and moved, I would have lost 6-5. I'm sorry, I would have won 6-5, whereas obviously assuming my dwarf at the back also survived, so those 2 things could have swung it. If that wolf hadn't run off, and then if the keeper had killed my guy, I would have lost. But as it was, it ended up 7-1 to me, which was, yeah, I basically just got lucky there. But yeah, so that's how that one went. So after round 4, I was 2 wins, 2 losses. So round 5 was domination. I was against Kieran and his Iron Hills, who were led by a captain on goat. Then he had 2 other goats. He had 1 dude with a mattock. I think he had 1 crossbow, and then the rest were spears and shields. So he only had 9 models, which is surprising. But I think it's because the goats and the captain on goat probably ate up a lot of the points. So it was a bit weird to come up against another dwarf army where I was on the same model count. But we ended up deploying the objectives all in one half. So we had 1 in the middle, and then basically 2 broadly along the centre line either side of it, and then 2 sort of backwards to almost form sort of a rectangle shape overall. And that's basically my tactic certainly was to keep them all together because of my little legs. So that's what I did with the 2 I placed. And I won the roll off to choose table edge, so I deployed my warband first. So I put 3 Iron Guard in weather. Oh, I was back on the Weathertop board. Sorry, I didn't actually say. So I had 3 Iron Guard in, and then I sort of put the king right next to Weathertop, so he could get up it if needed, but basically so I could stretch my warband out a bit, and then I just deployed the others in a straight line, thinking that Kieran might deploy directly opposite me. But as it was, Kieran deployed on the other side, although he put in 2 goat riders and then 2 Iron Hills with spear and shield in the middle. So he had 4 models to my 3. And basically, Kieran's incredibly unlucky, which is partly why it was such a pleasant game, because I just won all of the roll-offs and whatever. So he had his captain on the outside of Weathertop, but close enough obviously to call a heroic move. So we both called heroic moves with our dwarven leaders, and as it was, that one went to me, and I basically charged 1 into 1 goat, 1 into another, and then 2 tying up the shields in the middle. And then I quickly decided that I would abandon the objectives and just have some guys hanging out on the edge of Weathertop so they could jump back down to claim the objectives, um, which I thought was quite cunning because it meant I couldn't get goated. And I'd be defending an elevated position if he did charge me, but then towards the end of the game they could just sort of jump off next to the objectives. So I kept some dudes there. So in the middle, the king also eventually got involved, and I think basically I won that first roll off, killed a goat and then a spear, and then the next turn I think the captain was too far away to call a move, so I think I won priority that time. So I charged the other goat and the other spear and killed them. So that was great for me because I was 9 models to 5 at that point. But Kieran controlled 2 objectives. He controlled one at the back with a guy with a mattock, and then there was another mattock controlling the front one with a crossbow dude sort of hanging around, and he sort of threatened me with his goat man, but then sort of pulled him back to sort of meet all of his other models. So he was sort of mostly around one objective, and I basically sent 2 Iron Guard around the back to kill his back objective, and then I kept 3 Iron Guard in Weathertop, so 1 to stand in the middle, and then 2 to jump down onto uh, the objective sort of away from the fighting. So I think that left me I think it was four dudes, including the king, to go down and deal with the captain and his buddies. So captain the captain actually, so he didn't charge into my king, he charged into 2 Iron Guard, got both of them knocked down, which was nice for him. He rolled double 6 for the knockdown, bearing in mind his dice had been turd basically the whole game, and would continue to be turd actually. But the double knockdown on them, double 6s, was nice. And he won that combat and saw off one of my Iron Guard. But I think basically I didn't. I think I killed a couple more dudes, and I think I got the captain off his goat, but didn't hurt him. And basically, he ended the game with 2 models. I think he ended the game with the captain, and then the guy with mattock on the objective, because I'd killed the guy with the back objective. So that meant I had his back objective, the middle, and then the 2 others that I just had sort of dwarfs loitering around on. So that probably went as well as it could have possibly done. And again, I think hot dice had something to do with that, because I think if I had lost that first move off, I mean that could very easily just be all 3 of my dwarves dead, because he's got 2 goats on the charge with war spear. Obviously, both fight 4. He gets knocked down and stuff, possibly before the combat's even started. You know, if those go badly, that's just 3 dead dwarfs, and then I'm stuck outside of Weathertop, not near any objectives, and just kind of isolated. So I think basically the first turn went my way, and that kind of set the tone. But it was a fun game. Enjoyed it a lot. It was nice to have Dwarf Bowl as well, just sort of dwarfs hashing out in the middle of Weathertop. So that was exciting. But yes, so that was the end of Game 5. So for the next fight, I was against the ringer, Mr. Dan Garside, who was piloting his Numenor list, which was a captain on horse with shield and lance, and then a bunch of Numenorians with shield, and then a bunch of them with spear and bow, and then a banner as well, which is quite impressive, fitting that all in 200 points. We're playing Contest of Champions, so I was quite optimistic about this one, and we were on the Weathertop board, because I seemed to be on that one a lot, which I didn't mind actually, so it was a nice board. But we basically set up in Weathertop, obviously. One thing I could have done is probably set up in more of a concave way than I did, because I basically tried to deploy concave, so that basically if he charged me, I'd get more dice on him. If he let me charge him, I'd get throwing weapons on him, so it's kind of like win-win. He had his captain on one side, your shield wall in the middle. I just had all my dudes in the middle. And basically, turn 1, I think we had a heroic move off, which in retrospect, maybe I should just let him charge me, possibly. But I won that one anyway, stuck an Iron Guard into him, and then sort of got the king stuck in. I had a couple of dudes I was hoping I could just murder, and then chuck all my boys in on his warriors. throwing, basically, I won't go over throwing weapons. Throwing weapons did nothing this game, so that's kind of, if I threw a weapon, it didn't do anything. Um, um, and yeah, in terms of the fighting, he sent a couple of dudes round the back to flank me, and I was able to peel off a couple of Iron Guard and kill them. In terms of combats in the middle, I think my Iron Guard were pretty good against his warriors. My King, I don't think he lost a fight. We may have lost like one fight, maybe, I can't remember. But he didn't wound anyone the entire game. So because he was only against warriors the whole game. Because our leaders kind of avoided each other, as mostly because I think I think we may have had another move off turn two, and then we were both out of might, and then I just kept losing the priority until right at the end of the game. So he was able to sort of pick the charges and stuff, and just sort of bog my king down with like one dude or something with a spear support. But yeah, my king like won almost all the fights, but he just did not kill anything. I just kept rolling 4 high to kill. I thought about this after the game. I should have probably just piercing struck especially when I was sort of charged into 2 dudes, because I don't know, the risk is like massive, because obviously if you go down from defense 8 to defense 6 against strength 4 Numenorian, suddenly you could be killed relatively easily. But also killing Numenorian shields on a 4 is quite nice, particularly given the number of 4s I rolled. So in retrospect, that was an idea, but he did nothing the whole game. Whereas the captain would just sort of charge a dude, kill him, charge a dude, kill him. There was one turn where he charged a dude. I counter-charged him with a dude, and I was just like, well, I need you to botch now because you're on like 3 kills to my 0. And and then I botched my fight, and I was like, right, I'll just stick him in. And I still lost that one though, which is a bit of a bummer. I should have probably seen it coming with the 5-5, 2 attacks and a banner, but I was just like, look, he has to botch, and I have to get him off that bloody horse. But yeah, no, eventually I did get him off the horse. But yeah, it didn't really do anything, and we ended the game, and his army was decimated. In fairness, because of my Iron Guard, and mine was decimated because of the captain. So we both ended up with 3 models, and there was like a last turn Hail Mary where I could have potentially kept the game going to try and try and sort of get precisely the number of kills I needed, but realistically it probably wasn't going to happen. So I just sort of just killed the guys to quarter us. I think quarter him actually, and end the game. And yeah, I got absolutely slapped that game just because the king just. It's just one of those where if the king doesn't kill anyone because of guff dice, like that's just and it's just the case where the Numenorian captain didn't botch the whole game, and then my guy just didn't really get the kills. But yeah, it was a fun game still. I was just kind of frustrated with the captain, not the captain, the king. I kind of feel myself doing that because I was trying not to get annoyed with him, but he's definitely going to have to be on some sort of performance review scheme, I think, some sort of disciplinary. But yeah, it was a bit of a bummer. I tried to stick my king into his captain turn 1 because I was thinking that's what I want to do because I'm fight 5. I'm sorry, fight 6 against his fight 5. So I wanted it to be leader on leader because I thought I'd probably edge that one, but I just couldn't do it because of the control zones and stuff, and then losing priority repeatedly. But yeah, so I got slapped 8-1, and then Dan, embarrassingly, as Ringer was doing it, I think he ended the tournament with like 5 wins or something. So Dan was like absolutely destroying with. Like I was sort of taking the piss as well because I was sort of saying that it's just it's a guff army, isn't it? And you've taken a guff army just for someone to slap as Ringer, and then he just absolutely destroys me. So I've probably deserved it, to be honest, for mocking his army. So I probably had it coming. But that's it. So on to the last game. So the last game was Command the Battlefield, which is where you maelstrom onto the board, and then you're trying to control the quarters of the board, not including in this case, 6-inch area in the middle of the board. Yes, and I was against Stuart with his Minas Tirith. So he was led by Denethor, and he had Pippin in his own warband, and then Baragon, sorry. And then I think he he must have had 3 or 4 men of Minas Tirith with shield, and then all the others were Citadel Guard, and I think 3 of them had bows. The rest were with spears. So he did have a surprising number of models, actually, just because Denethor's so cheap, as is Baragon and Pippin too. They're quite cheap. And this is just kind of one of those things where he won priority turn one, so he maelstrommed on. I sort of put him at the opposite end of the table, didn't really matter. And then I maelstrommed on, and then I could choose to come on the north table edge. I think I spent a point of might to come on, and basically I just lined up opposite him and threw loads of weapons. And then turn two, I think he had priority, and I didn't counter with might or anything. And he charged Denethor into my king and an Iron Guard, I think, and then no, he charged Denethor and a Citadel Guard into my king, and then sort of tied other stuff up. Tied my other Iron Guards up with Citadel Guard. But obviously, because of how pairings work in Middle Earth, the way he'd left his Citadel Guard meant I could pair him off with a Iron Guard who countercharged, which meant that Denethor was just fighting the king, which was quite fortunate for me. And this is possibly just best described as a bit of a dicing again, in that I think the king went against Denethor and killed him in one turn of combat, and then I killed a few Citadel Guard, and I think the dice were just sort of continuously going my way. Really, I think he won a couple of combats. Obviously, he didn't kill me with the defense 6, so he needed a 6 to kill. And then yeah, he sort of we had a second round of combat where I think I just sort of cleaned up a lot, and then he decided to run away, which may have possibly been wise to try and play the mission basically, and rather than trying to fight me. And he had a few longbow shots, but ultimately didn't really do anything. And I started splitting up my Iron Guard, so I sent one to hide in the sort of corner near where he'd been fighting to claim that one, and then I sent two down the middle, or two or three, I can't remember now. And one of them went after Pippin, who had maelstrommed onto the opposite side to all the action. So I sent one dude to go and murder him and claim that quarter, and then the remaining ones sort of converged on the remaining warriors. Pippin tried a cheeky throw stone, which was quite cool, but it just bounced off my dwarf fellow. And in 2 rounds of combat, I killed Pippin, and then once I got stuck into the survivors by Beragond and the bowman, it was a bit of a dicing again. I think in terms of, well, I think at this point, to be fair, I had it was like a bunch of one-on-ones, and I had 2 attacks against 1 attack, and yes, it was a bit murdery. So that one very much went my way, but it was a very pleasant game to end on, and I enjoyed the game, and I ended that one 10-0. I can't remember why. Oh, because I think I got all the VPs apart from we both had the same number of models left in the final quarter, because you had 2 models left. I had 2 Iron Guard in the same corner, so nobody got that one. So that's the one I dropped. So that's 10-0. So where did that leave me? So that left me in 7th, with 4 wins, 3 losses. I was looking at the the tournament points, and I think I got 2 extra tournament points, because you got a tournament point if your list was submitted on time, which mine was by about 2 hours. Because the night before, because I sort of decided on Iron Guard, and then I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that, and then I realised I hadn't submitted anything. So at like 10 or half 10 or something of the sort of midnight deadline, I was just like, oh crap, I better put it in. But yes, anyway, that was a weird digression. So I got that one, and then if you got, I think it was at least 1 and maybe 2 most sportings, you got an extra one, and I sensed that Cameron may have given me most sporting for taking my blowpiping well, and then setting aside our differences over Mackey's. So so I think I got that one. I think that's where I got that one from anyway. But who knows? Maybe more than one person likes me, but I doubt it. Yeah. So that was that. I was a bit bummed out, especially with the Numenorian game. I was just like, oh, I could have got that, and then I could have gotten 5-2, and then podiums maybe. But I was looking at the scores, and actually, if I'd won 3 games, because my victory point difference was so turd, I still would have only been in sixth. so so it didn't actually didn't matter. So I was top of the people who won 4 and lost 3, so that was cool. And bearing in mind that I think of the of the first 4 games, I think I lost half of them. So it was yeah, turned it around a little bit. But yes, that was that. I really enjoyed this format. I don't think I'd want to do it often, in the sense that yeah, once or twice a year is probably about right. And it's one of those where you kind of have to switch off the competitive part of your brain, because it's. I mean, certainly, what 2 or 3 of the games in particular were very just sort of, whoever's rolling hotter just won, basically, in the same way that, battle companies, you can just have your leader sniped turn 1, and then it's just a bit like, well. But the rounds were 45 minutes and 7 games, so it's a bit like, if something happens in one game, it's only 45 minutes, and then you're having another game to try it again. So I really liked it. Probably try a different list next time. I really like this one, but it did feel a bit mean actually having 2 attacks, throwing weapons and stuff. But I did enjoy it. Yeah, and obviously Dan and Joseph hosted a very good tournament. So yeah, no complaints there. Definitely be up for the next one. But I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you at the next one.